Chapter 15. The Stillness. My first act before I went into the pantry was to fasten the door between the kitchen and the scullery. But the pantry was empty, every scrap of food gone. After that, I despaired for the first time. I had no food on the 11th or the 12th day. The Martian had taken everything away. On the 12th day, my throat was so painful that I attacked the rainwater pump that stood by the sink and got a couple of glassfuls of blackened and tainted rainwater. I could hear no sound or movement and too weak to go and investigate. On the 15th day, I heard a curious familiar sound and identified it as the scratching of a dog. Going into the kitchen, I saw a dog's nose peering in through the hole in the wall. As I crept forward, he suddenly withdrew his head and disappeared. Encouraged by the silence, I looked out. Except in the corner, where a multitude of crows hopped and fought over the skeletons of the dead the Martians had consumed, there was not a living thing in the pit. I could not believe my eyes. All the machinery had gone. Slowly, I thrust myself out and stood on a mound of rubble. I saw in every direction and found there was no Martian or signs of Martians to be seen. My chance to escape had come. I began to tremble. The neighboring houses had been smashed, but there was stood. What I had last seen of this city was a street of red and white houses with abundant shady trees. Now I stood on a mound of smashed brickwork, clay, and gravel over which spread a great number of red cactus shaped plants, knee high. The trees near me were dead and brown. The day seemed dazzling bright in contrast to my recent imprisonment. A gentle breeze blew, and oh, the sweetness of the air. Chapter 16. The Work of 15 Days. For some time I stood tottering on the mound, regardless of any safety. I had not realized what had been happening to the rest of the world. Standing here, I felt the first indication of a thing that grew quite clear in my mind, a sense of depression and helplessness, a feeling that I was no longer a master, but an animal among other animals under the Martian heel. I suddenly realized I had not eaten anything for quite a long time now. I noticed beyond a wall a patch of garden unburied. This gave me a hint, and I went knee deep and sometimes neck deep in the red weed till I stumbled into the garden. Here I found young onions and carrots, which I hurriedly gobbled up. I found a group of mushrooms, which also I ate hungrily. I went on my way and crossed you. And at Richmond, the Thames water poured in a broad and shallow stream across the meadows of Hampton and Twickenham. In the meantime, the red weed vanished as quickly as it had spread. A disease, due to certain bacteria, seized upon it. The red weed rooted like a thing already dead. They broke off at the slightest touch, and the waters that had stimulated their early growth now carried over their last races out in the sea. My first act on coming to this water was to slake my thirst. I drank and gulped a great deal of it. I managed to make out the road by means of occasional ruins of villas and fences and lamps. I went up the hill and finally came out on Putney Common. Here the scenery changed from the strange and unfamiliar to the wreckage of familiar, patches of devastated ground, and then, after a few yards, I came across upon perfectly undisturbed places, houses with their blind drawn and doors closed. I raided a few silent houses for food, but they had already been ransacked. All this time, I saw no human beings and no signs of the Martians either. After sunset, I struggled on along the road to Putney, where I think the heat ray must have been used for some reason. The place was absolutely deserted, and there was nothing but overall silence. It filled one with indescribable terror, utter loneliness, and an overwhelming sense of despair. For a moment, I thought mankind had been swept out of existence, and I stood there alone, the last man left alive. I came upon no bodies but skeletons upon skeletons. The Martians, I thought, had moved on and left the country desolated, probably seeking food elsewhere. Perhaps even now they were destroying Berlin or Paris. Or it might be that they had gone northward to destroy humanity at large.